You are listening to The Hero's Journey. I'm Jeff Garvin.
And I'm Dan Zarzana.
Let the journey begin. Welcome to another episode of The Hero's Journey, where we analyze your favorite books and films through the lens of Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces and Christopher Vogler's modern adaptation, The Writer's Journey.
You bailed on the Slater accent already.
Oh, there's more.
All right, a little backstory for you folks. I met Jeff in junior high, or what some of you call middle school. Mm-hmm. That would have been 1989 or 90.
Mm-hmm.
For the entire time I have known Jeff, a period in excess of 3 decades, he has been a huge Christian Slater fan. In high school, he styled his hair like Slater's Heather's character, Jason Dean, often did and still does. You have already heard it once. A pretty darn good impression of Slater's signature vocal style. As we battled our way through high school in the 90s, every new Christian Slater movie to hit the theaters was the best movie ever made. And in the 5 years that we have spent producing this podcast, a Christian Slater themed episode has always been on Jeff's wish list. But the heavy breathing intensified last summer when we covered the 1991 film Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. This did not satiate Jeff's hunger for Christian Slater. Oh no, this was the appetizer, and Jeff demanded more.
Before I summarize the poll, Dan, thank you for doing this episode with me. I understand what a heroic sacrifice it has been for you.
I'm no hero. The training took over. I only did what anyone in this position would do.
I chose 3 of my favorite Christian Slater films and asked our Patreon supporters to vote on which one they wanted us to discuss. The choices were Heather's, 1988, directed by Michael Lehman, Pump Up the Volume, 1990, directed by Alan Moyle, and True Romance, 1993, directed by Tony Scott.
All solid choices, but the film I expected to win didn't even collect double-digit percentage of the vote. I was stunned. Just 8% went to my personal favorite Christian Slater movie, Heather's. I was so ready for it.
Imagine what might have happened if we included Gleaming the Cube. Second place went to Pump Up the Volume with 42% of the vote, and with solid half of the vote, the win went to True Romance.
You win again, Chad Pauly. Did you see that? Did you see that campaign he was running over on our Patreon?
And Joseph Wilbert took a stab at us too. Man.
Yeah. And Adam Baxter said True Romance is one of the best films of all time. So
Agreed.
Now I have an extra layer of anxiety myself because I don't want to disappoint him.
Wait, did you not like True Romance?
Oh, I do. Okay. I just don't want my analysis to be lacking. I don't want to be wrong.
Oh, 11 benevolent elephants, 11 benevolent elephants. True Romance was released September 10, 1993. So we had just started our senior year of high school. How perfect.
I wonder which Dungeons and Dragons campaign we were playing then.
I don't know, but I guarantee you I drew my character portrait with Christian Slater hair with the widow's peak and the slick back. Directed by Top Gun Helmer Tony Scott and written by the one, the only, Quentin Tarantino. True Romance shockingly failed to attract much of an audience.
Yeah.
Earning just $13 million worldwide against its $13 million budget. So if you add in marketing, the film probably lost money.
Yeah. I'm surprised the budget wasn't higher given the cast.
Right?
The opening credits list Christian Slater and Patricia Arquette above the film title, and then Hollywood legend Dennis Hopper.
Jeez, man.
Val Kilmer, whose Oscar-worthy performance in Tombstone was just 3 months away, and who would don the cowl in Batman Forever less than 2 years later.
Wow.
Gary Oldman, also a member of the Batman family, who had starred in Dracula the year before and was just 4 years away from playing Zorg in The Fifth Element. Brad Pitt, fresh off his attention-grabbing appearance in Thelma and Louise, and on the tip of stardom with Interview with the Vampire, Legends of the Fall, 7, and 12 Monkeys, all releasing within 18 months of this film.
Oh my God.
What a huge year and a half he had. And another Batman alum, Christopher effin' Walken.
A man who needs no introduction.
And I thought your Peter Isherwell impression was good. Oh, it's just you definitely have a menagerie of impressions that you do very well.
I predict that second only to Braveheart, this will be difficult to get through.
Yeah. This film also features a post-Perfect Strangers Bronson Pinchot,
So
a
great.
pre-Pulp Fiction Samuel L. Jackson, a post-Reservoir Dogs Chris Penn, a pre-Heat and pre-Saving Private Ryan Tom Sizemore, Saul Rubinek, who's excellent in the Amazon Prime series Hunters. He plays film producer Lee Donowitz, a character who connects this film to the Tarantino-verse in a very interesting way.
It's too much. Next episode, we're doing a movie with 2 characters in it.
Yeah, next time on The Hero's Journey, My Dinner with Andre.
We'll have to talk about that offline. For now, though, cue up your Sonny Chiba triple feature, put on your peach chapstick, and gas up your purple Cadillac convertible. This is a hero's journey of true romance.
Act 1 of The Hero's Journey begins with the world of Common Day, where we see our character in their status quo normal life. Clarence, played by Christian Slater, is a single 20-something Elvis lover who works at a comic book shop in Detroit, goes to Sonny Chiba triple features alone on his birthday, and fails to pick up prostitutes in empty bars. And yes, you recognize that prostitute, played by Anna Thompson, as Darla in The Crow in 1994. That is Clarence in a nutshell.
Well, as I feared, we're already splitting off here, Dan. We've had this battle back and forth about movies like this and their ordinary world, where the call to adventure happens. And I'm afraid you're going to beat me because I'm sort of taking your It's a Wonderful Life style analysis. I guess I'll add in the rest of my ordinary world here because it's clearly going to bleed into your call to adventure. Hopefully I'll be able to persuade you. So as you mentioned, Clarence Worley he's a pop culture geek, works in a comic shop, obsessed with Elvis and kung fu movies. And he's so awkward that his boss has hired a call girl, Alabama, to pretend to hit on him so he can get laid. Only after a single date and a roll in the hay, they fall in love and get married. Love story, beginning, middle, and end, right? This could be a movie unto itself, but nope.
Yeah, it happens fast.
This is Clarence's ordinary world before the adventure starts. I believe it's an entirely different adventure that Clarence goes on with her.
Well, the call to adventure. Well, why don't you jump into call to adventure since it's your segment?
That brings us to call to adventure. The hero is presented with a challenge, which renders him unable to continue living in the comfort of the ordinary world. So after their City Hall wedding, Clarence and Alabama go to a tattoo parlor to get their names indelibly inscribed on their flesh, because that's always a good idea in a new relationship. Alabama's sweating in the chair, and Clarence asks her about a word she said during her confession of love, Drexel. Alabama tells Clarence that Drexel was her pimp, that he treated her decent, but she saw him get rough with her friend Arlene, like he kicked her around, and it was scary. I would argue that the true call to adventure and true romance is Clarence finding out about Drexel, because this information that Alabama has an abusive pimp is what renders Clarence unable to continue living in the comfort of his ordinary world, of this loving relationship. However, Tarantino gives us an explicit expression of the call. Back at his apartment, Clarence is on the couch with Alabama. They're watching yet another martial arts movie on TV, and she's really into it. But you get the idea that she really is a good match for Clarence. She's into it. But Clarence is just simmering with the knowledge that this Drexel guy's out there. And he goes into the bathroom to splash water on his face and look into the mirror, because that's what you do in movies. And in the background, we hear Elvis singing Heartbreak Hotel. And then he begins to speak to Clarence. And he says,
"Can you live with it?
Live with what?
That son of a bitch walking around breathing the same air as you. Getting away with it every day. Are you haunted?
Yeah.
You want to get unhaunted?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'd kill him. Shoot him in the face. Put him down like a dog."
That's what I saw as Clarence's call to adventure.
I'm surprised that scene isn't the meeting with the mentor.
That's originally how I'd had it pegged.
Maybe it shares space
It does.
with the segment. I mean, the character, to avoid legal action from the Presley estate, just named the character the Mentor.
Yes. And my meeting with the Mentor, one part of it happens in that scene for sure. But when Elvis says, shoot him down like a dog, that is assuming that Elvis is some part of Clarence, right? And not a supernatural being, which is what we're led to believe. That's what drives him into this adventure. If it wasn't for finding out about Drexel, they would have just had their happy little marriage.
My call to adventure was from the movie theater all the way up through the love scene.
Yeah.
That was the call to adventure because up until that point, Clarence is a single, awkward pop culture guy who gives the same speech about Elvis to every woman. I love that when Clarence and Alabama are at the diner after the movie, you hear the end of him talking about Elvis again. And he says again, enough about the king. What about you? Which is exactly what he said to the woman in the bar before the opening title sequence.
That's his Tinder date script.
But up until that point, Clarence is just this guy who goes to the movies by himself on his birthday. That's his ordinary world. And disrupting that is Alabama.
There may be two calls here. His life gets disrupted twice. He's a comic book geek. His boss interrupts him with this girl who accidentally falls in love with him.
Right.
I don't disagree with you.
All right. Well, let's hop into refusal of the call. Confronted with fear of the unknown, the call to adventure is refused either directly by the hero or by external forces. For me, the refusal was Alabama revealing that she had a pimp and that he is a dangerous guy. Like you said, this means that they're not going to have a fairy tale relationship. Drexel is a roadblock because we all know that the pimp does not let his merchandise go easily. We then cut to a scene of Drexel.
Yeah.
We meet Gary Oldman in this incredible performance. And this guy is ruthless. He's in a motel room doing a drug deal, and he murders the two guys that he's doing the deal with. You see how dangerous this man is.
Yeah.
For me, that's the refusal from outside forces. Here's this guy that needs to be dealt with or fled from.
Yeah. I can see that.
That was my refusal. What do you got?
Well, first I had refusal from within after, my call is Elvis, a.k.a. the Mentor, telling Clarence, shoot him. Clarence says, I do want to kill him, but I don't want to go to jail for the rest of my life. So there's a little bit of resistance, like, I can't do this, I shouldn't do this. And then there's refusal from without. Clarence comes out of the bathroom and he says to Alabama, write down your former address. She says, why? I'm going to go pick up your stuff. Come on, baby Clarence. I just want to disappear. I don't think this is a good idea. So she's trying to stop him from answering the call. So that was what I had as refusal.
That's a great point. Yeah, I like that.
Well, that brings us to meeting with the Mentor, where the hero receives counsel on how to operate in the special world. Now, as you mentioned, Val Kilmer's character, I like you, Clarence, always have, always will, is literally billed as the Mentor. It's like, oh my God, thank you, Tarantino. He does serve some mentor functions, and I think you'll agree with me. He tells Clarence how easy it'll be to get away with killing Drexel, that the cops don't care about pimps. As long as he's not caught with a smoking gun at the scene of the crime, he'll get away with it. So that's definitely mentorship. And then there's a little late mentorship later on from Clarence's dad, played by the inimitable Dennis Hopper, who tells Clarence, stay out of trouble. You've got a wife to think about now. Quit effing around.
All right, which brings us to the final segment of Act 1, crossing the first threshold. The crossing of the threshold is Clarence's confrontation with Drexel at Drexel's den of sin. It is a great scene between Clarence and Drexel. He's got a milky eye. He's got gnarly scars on that face. The guy's he's been through some stuff himself.
He's a James Bond villain, essentially.
He'd
make what a great James Bond villain.
He really is, yeah. But he's also got this method of speaking.
Let's see. We're sitting down here, ready to negotiate. You've already given up your shit. I'm still a mystery to you. But I know exactly where your white ass is coming from.
And I wonder if this was Gary Oldman adding to the character, or if in the script it's specified that the character speaks this way.
The answer to that
would
is
be
in the
interesting.
tidbits.
Oh, great. Okay, so bonus audio content for the answer to that. That'll be new. That'll be new for me as well. Great.
Oh, good.
He's intimidating, and we see Clarence really stand up to him. This is another proof to me that this film is a fantasy. I don't think that a guy like Clarence would really be that rock solid against this terrifying guy.
Interesting.
He's playing out the fantasy of the characters that he sees when he goes to kung fu movies the comic book characters that he reads. So he's playing out this fantasy, and it works.
I see him as a step more into the pale there, where he's having hallucinated a conversation with Elvis and having said, I want to be him so bad. And then Elvis tells him to kill him. I think he's actually, he's unhinged and he's becoming one of those heroes that he thinks is a hero.
I think we're kind of saying the same thing.
Yeah. Fantasy versus break with reality. Yeah.
So Clarence and Drexel, they get into a knockdown, drag-out fight where they're throwing each other around through aquariums, and
so violent.
Drexel punches him in the gut, kicks him in the nuts, drops him, and then tells Marty, you go get Alabama and bring her back here. I'll keep our boy Clarence here entertained. Mm-hmm. And in a moment of distraction, when Drexel turns to say something to Marty, that's when Clarence takes his opportunity, pulls out a gun that he had hidden in his sock, and shoots Drexel in the crotch.
Thank you, Tarantino, for that.
Yeah. Then he shoots Marty, screams at one of Drexel's girls, get out Alabama's things, put him in a bag, and then he disappears. He gets back to the apartment that he's now sharing with Alabama with a hamburger, and he's chewing on it. This is the best hamburger I've ever had. Of course, if you face death like that and survive, everything's going to taste a little better.
Mm-hmm.
He tells Alabama, I killed him. And she starts to cry. And he's like, what? Did you love him? Did you love him? And she's like, what you did was so romantic. And then she jumps on him and they start making out. And then they open the bag because she wants her clean clothes. It's not clean clothes in this bag, Jeff. It is a suitcase full of bricks of cocaine. Whoopsie doodle. And she giggles and says,
These aren't my clothes.
And I think that's the end of Act 1.
I love it.
Agreed?
Yeah, let's take a break and talk about our side quests.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the...
Yes!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Campbell Cafe, where Jeff and I take a little break from the current journey, have a cup of Joe, and discuss... You know what I just realized?
What?
Joseph Campbell, Joe, cup of Joe. That wasn't intentional when I named this thing the Campbell Cafe. I was just, but Joe, have a cup of Joe. Anyway, and we discuss these side quests that we have engaged ourselves in since the last episode. What you been up to, Jeff, besides getting COVID in France?
Well, thanks to 2 long plane flights and a week of being couch-ridden, I have consumed more filmed entertainment in the last 30 days than I have in years. In fact, if I cut it off by month, all I have to do is watch one more movie this month, and I will beat my record since I started logging movies in 2018.
Wow.
So I'm going to rapid fire the movies that I watched, just as like a flex, and then you tell me which ones you want to hear about. Okay?
Okay.
The Firm, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Body of Lies, The Batman, Elysium, True Romance, Coda, My Octopus Teacher, Phantom Thread, No Time to Die, Moon.
I love Moon, and I hope you did too. I saw that with my wife in the theater when it came out, and the soundtrack, the score.
Oh, so good.
By Clint Mansell it's on permanent rotation on my...
Oh, really?
I still do have an iPod, and it works, and I play the Moon score a lot. You've got 2 superhero movies in there.
Yeah.
And I don't know you to be... Particularly, Doctor Strange is the surprising one. I didn't think... You're not a Marvel...
I've watched all the Marvel
fan.
movies. I've watched
You've
them all.
watched all the Marvel movies. So you've seen actually more Marvel movies than I have now. And that surprises me. I want to know about My Octopus Teacher. I know it's a documentary,
It's a documentary about this South African, it's like an autobiographical movie about this South African filmmaker who goes through a really rough time in his filmmaking and his life. He's disconnected from his son. So he moves back to the southern tip of Africa to where he grew up as a boy, where he used to snorkel in this kelp forest. So he goes down one day and he sees this octopus swimming in the water, and he follows it to its den and just sort of hangs out. And he goes to bed that night and wakes up thinking about this octopus. So he goes back again and he keeps visiting this octopus at its den. And then one day, the octopus starts to come out of its den and it reaches out with one of its arms and touches his hand. And then it touches his face, and then it swims out and just starts like physically exploring him, and then goes back into its den. So over a period of the next 100 days, he befriends this octopus. He watches it. He interacts with it. It rides on him. It tries to eat his camera. Oh, this is amazing. So he's this relationship with this filmmaker and the octopus. And at one point near the end, as the octopus is aging, because they live about a year, it swims up to him and hugs him. And you guys, I was so emotional about this octopus. I've never seen anything like this. It's half nature documentary, half love story, and it's incredible. I highly recommend it. I also read 3 books, one of which was Clara and the Sun, and I know you're reading that now, so we'll discuss that when you've finished it, because I want to hear your take.
I'm done.
Oh, you're done. What'd you think? So it's by Kazuo Ishiguro, and it's about an artificial friend, like a robot artificial intelligence and her experience of the world. What did you think of it?
Love the concept. I enjoyed the first 2 acts of the book, and I think the last 2 parts, he breaks up the book into 6 parts. I enjoyed the first 4 parts. The last 2 parts, I think the story petered out, and I was disappointed with it. I didn't really care for the writing style, I think. I understand that Clara is she's an artificial friend intended for children. So Clara herself is small, like a child would be. And maybe that's why her language is, I don't want to say simple. It's just childlike, I guess. But Clara is she's inquisitive, observant. That I liked about her. I think that was an interesting aspect of the character, is seeing this artificial person trying to decipher humans by observing them. And then there's a whole other reason why this is a necessary attribute of Clara. And where that plot went, I did not like. I thought it pulled the punch at the end. I felt let down. One thing I did like about it, and I've never had this happen to me when I'm reading a novel before, is that as I was reading, I was picturing an anime adaptation.
Yeah, I can see that.
Especially with the episodic nature of the way the story is told. I could see those as episodes of a long-running anime series. What did you think?
I gave it 3 stars because I thought
me too.
It was an unusual story. My favorite element was, so it's written first person from the perspective of the artificial friend who, while her thoughts are human-like, you just get hints that her perception and the way she experiences the world is very different from humans. So she's describing her sight, and she talks about, well, this was in one square and this was in the other square. And I was like, wait, what is she talking about? And then as it goes down, you get the sense that her vision is broken up into these panels, which become magnified based on their significance or importance in the moment. But because it's being described from first person, the author has no room to, and the character has no need to, go into depths of explanation of why it is. And I love that, when a character just tells you how it is and you have to figure it out. So I really like that.
Similarly with the term lifted, they keep talking about people being lifted, and it's not explained until the very end. And I liked that about it, is trying to figure out, what are they talking about? What do you mean lifted?
Yeah, I agree. So I enjoyed the writing, and I enjoyed the sensory description and everything. The story in general, to me, felt lacking. I wanted more conflict, more obstacles. It's awkward because the character of Clara is almost more of a witness. And so while she does try to have an effect on the main character, her effect is sort of illusory and unreal and not effectual. And so I really wanted it to be Clara's story, but it's kind of, her story is the least interesting story of the characters. So that was interesting, but
And the whole sun thing, where the sun is a god, a deity of some kind, and she almost prays. Her relationship to the sun is one of somebody who reveres it as a highly religious person might revere a god of some kind.
That's the thing, that the story is based on her misunderstanding of how the world works.
I gave it 3 stars as well because I enjoyed the idea and most of the story. I thought the in part 4 went, I don't want to say anything.
Yeah, don't spoil.
The one thing I guess I've been playing some video games, I've been watching some stuff. I guess the one thing I want to mention in terms of watching is that my wife and I just finished watching Peaky Blinders Season 6. This is the series finale.
Wow.
Rumor is there's going to be a feature film to kind of wrap it all up, but this is the end of the show, or it's done now, and it was one of the most satisfying series conclusions I've seen, along with shows like Breaking Bad, Schitt's Creek, Dark, The Office UK. Give it a try. It's a really great drama that starts with Cillian Murphy returning home from World War I to his Birmingham home, and much like Michael Corleone returns home from World War II and takes over the family and becomes a crime lord.
Good parallel.
Similar is Tommy Shelby.
All right, well, let's enjoy our cup of Joseph and move on to Act 2. Act 2 of the hero's journey begins with tests, allies, enemies. Now in the special world, our hero makes allies, meets enemies, and must pass a series of tests to prove his worthiness. On the allies roster, we've got Alabama, we've got Clifford Worley, dad of Clarence, played by Dennis Hopper, and we got Dick Ritchie, Michael Rappaport, who does such a great job of being this sweet, innocent guy.
Right.
Dick Ritchie! That's me. I'm me.
On the enemy side, though he is already deceased by the time we reach Act 2, Drexel Spivey, played by Gary Oldman. Vincenzo Cocotti? How would you say that?
My name is Vincent Cocotti. I work as consul for Mr. Blue Boyle.
Played by Christopher Walken. And I was going to call him inimitable, but I'm about to imitate him a lot, so... we got Virgil, one of Blue Boyle's heavies, or one of Christopher Walken's heavies, played by James Gandolfini.
Yes.
He's so great. And then we have the cops. So we got Nicky Dimes, played by Chris Penn, and Cody Nicholson, played by Tom Sizemore.
Nickels and Dimes.
Oh, that's right. And then we got some shapeshifters. We got Elliot Blitzer, who at first is an ally. He might be the connection for the drug deal. He's Dick's friend, played by Bronson Pinchot brilliantly. Bronson Pinchot's performance is almost too comedic, but he stays in reality. So he's the comic relief, but it's real tension release. It's not tongue-in-cheek. And then we've got Floyd, Dick's stoner roommate, played by a young Brad Pitt, who...
You've got him as a shapeshifter?
Yeah, because he appears to be a friend, but then he ends up selling him out and telling the bad guys exactly where...
Well, that's why I've got Floyd as an enemy. He never does anything positive for the heroes of the story.
So
I had Lance listed as an ally.
Wait, remind me who Lance is.
Clarence's boss.
Oh,
the one who hires Alabama.
Yeah, we never meet him, but we get the feeling he's a good boss. He'll loan you money when you need it, and he'll hire a call girl on your birthday to make you feel like a big man. All right, so tests. You had the discovery of the suitcase of coke as end of Act 1, and I agree. But there's a test element that I kind of want to insert here, which is the first test is Clarence testing Alabama's loyalty. So he returns to the apartment with the burgers and he says he's killed Drexel and she starts to cry and he gets in her face. Like you said, do you love him? Do you love him?
Right.
And of course she's not crying because she's mourning. She's crying because it was romantic.
She's happy,
Something important to note here. when Clarence returns to the apartment, he's wearing Elvis sunglasses. He puts them on the way to Drexel's, but he's putting on the armor of his hero.
Oh.
As he goes to confront.
Got it.
So maybe
That's
Elvis
good.
off screen gave him this as a supernatural aid. So then when he returns from that shooting, now he's wearing them in front of her for the first time. This is her first sight of him
yes.
with these glasses, and it's hiding his wounds. So I just thought that was a really interesting thing. He's taken on some of Elvis's courageous personality. He wanted to be Elvis because he's such a badass, and now he's wearing Elvis's clothes.
It's a superhero costume.
So they go to see Clarence's dad, Cliff, who's an ex-cop turned security guard, played by Dennis Hopper. And Clarence introduces his new bride, which sends Cliff into shock. And then, off-screen, Clarence fills in his dad on the murder he just committed and their subsequent flight.
Right.
And he asks Dad to help him. He wants Cliff to call his friends from the police force and find out if the cops are looking for him. Does he need to be worried and looking over his shoulder? Mm-hmm. This is an interesting test. I saw this as a test of Clarence's relationships and persuasive skills, because we haven't met a single person in Clarence's life yet. The boss we know exists, but that's really the only idea we have of what kind of friends he has. And that leads us to suspect that maybe people generally like Clarence. But this is a big ask. What's his relationship like with his father? We are testing the family. He hasn't spoken to his father in 3 years.
Yes.
And they have an interaction that kind of cleans up some of the past where his dad was an alcoholic and he said, I never asked anything from you. It's a pass because his dad does help him. Also, this is a test of Clarence's guts. Does he have what it takes to be the outlaw he has so impulsively become? Is he worthy of the admiration of his hero, Elvis? Can he protect his new wife? And this is, I think, this whole sequence is a pass. So Dad makes a call to his friends on the force, and he tells Clarence the cops aren't after him. They think the murder of Drexel is drug-related. Apparently, Drexel had an association with a gangster named Blue Lou Boyle. And his dad says, he describes Blue Lou as somebody you don't want on your ass, which of course we immediately know, oh God, he's on their ass. So Dad gives them some money, gives his blessing on their marriage, and then gives Clarence the mentorship, stay out of trouble. And then Clarence gives Cliff the address of where he'll be staying with his friend Dick. This becomes a massive mistake, a sort of failed test in his own right, or the price of his trust. Hard to say. Alabama then gives Dad an uncomfortably intimate kiss.
Yes.
Like an open mouth 2-part kiss. And then they're off into the sunset in Clarence's purple Cadillac. And my first thought was, so that's how it is in their family.
Yeah, I like it in when Clarence, first of all, Clarence sends, before he has this conversation with his father, he sends Alabama out to get beer. And he says, isn't she great? Like, isn't she the prettiest thing you've ever seen? She tastes like a peach. And when Alabama kisses Clifford as they're driving away, he goes, son of a bitch, she does taste like a peach.
Yeah, it's a little gross, man. It's a little gross. And at first, Clarence is sort of jealous, but he takes it in stride. This is a guy who murdered her pimp just for being her pimp. Anyway, okay, so
I have something else to say about this scene. So if you're going to jump ahead to the next one, let me
do
get this
it.
in first.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to talk about Dick and his audition.
Alabama returns from the grocery store run. Didn't get Clarence any chicken because, quote, it's too early in the morning. It's only 9 o'clock. Got the beer, though.
Yep.
So not too early for beer at 9 a.m., but chicken. Too early, Clarence. I laughed at that. I thought that was funny. That was good character development.
So also during this sequence, we meet Dick Ritchie, Clarence's best friend in the world, and he's auditioning for T.J. Hooker. And he's doing this driving scene. And as an actor, driving scenes and auditions are so lame because, like, do you mock the steering wheel? So he's got the steering wheel, totally confident, and he's supposed to be, there's like someone on the hood, and he's like, hey, shoot him, get him. The casting director.
I love her. Conchata Farrell, I believe.
Yeah.
She's fantastic.
That's what I have as end of tests. Because the minute they drive away from Dad's house, they are approaching Hollywood, which to me is the inmost cave.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I have the showdown. The showdown. Clifford being confronted by the mobsters as the last test. It's not a test of Clarence or Alabama. It's kind of a side scene, but it is a really incredible versus between Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper as really powerhouse actors. It's a great scene. Vincenzo Caccotti is there to get information from Clifford Worley about where his son has disappeared. And Clifford is stalling and lying, and he knows he's a dead man. He's just wasting time. It's an amazing scene.
Yeah. The function of this scene is that the gangsters find the slip of paper with Dick's address on it.
Yes.
In any other movie, they'd bust into the trailer, ask him a couple of questions, shoot him, find the thing, and get out. Instead, we get 10 minutes of a face-off between two of the greatest actors in American cinema, Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper, and it's a Walken fest. And like you said, it's a showdown. So Walken is this Sicilian badass, and he claims to know when someone's lying. He says, Sicilians are great liars, the best in the world. And he talks about how a guy has 17 pantomimes. Woman's got 20. The guy's got 17. So he's saying, I know I can tell if you're lying, so you don't lie to me. And so Cliff, at this point, he says, all right, well, can I have that cigarette you offered me? And he's showing resignation. So Vincenzo kind of relaxes, like, all right, I'm going to get the information now. I'm going to let this guy chill out. But Cliff launches into this highly racist story.
Amazing.
Basically saying that Vincenzo's whole family is descended from black people, which is an insult to him. It's a horribly racist monologue, as we see a lot in Tarantino's characters. But it makes him so mad that instead of torturing him further, he just shoots him. So
yes,
it's a smart move because he's enraging this guy. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, even from the beginning of that scene, I'm the Antichrist. It got me in a vendetta kind of mood. Tell the angels in heaven that you've never seen pure evil so singularly personified as you did in the face of the man who killed you. I mean, this is Tarantino at his best. And because he's got these two heavyweight actors, the dialogue feels completely natural. But if you read it, you're like, who the hell can pull off that kind of a speech?
Tarantino's just amazing at these types of speeches. Mm-hmm. You see it again in another Tony Scott movie, Crimson Tide. Which Tarantino didn't write, but he did do a rewrite of the scene about the stallions.
Yes, the Lippinzahner stallion.
That speech was a Tarantino. And you know why Tony Scott went to Tarantino and said, remember that thing you did about Sicilians in True Romance? Can you do that something? I need something like that for my new movie.
I need a racist diatribe. A thinly veiled racist diatribe.
So I guess we should jump into Approach to the Inmost Cave, where the hero reaches the edge of a dangerous place where the object of their quest is hidden. The scene that I pegged as the approach to the Inmost Cave is Clarence and Alabama arriving at Dick's house. Yeah. And then all three of them pile into the purple Cadillac and drive to the Safari Inn, which actually is in Burbank.
That's right.
This is the second movie we've covered that used the Safari Inn as a location.
Remind me.
Apollo 13.
Oh, that's right.
When Marilyn Lovell comes to Florida to watch the launch, we see an external shot of the Safari Inn, which is actually in Burbank, right here on Olive, not too far from where I am right now.
We need to do a live photo shoot there for this episode before it comes out. I'll make it my goal to come visit you, and we'll do a photo shoot.
During the scene, we hear Dick Ritchie talking about the audition for T.J. Hooker, and he really hopes he gets it because how cool would it be to be in a scene with William Shatner? Now, at the time, T.J. Hooker was off the air, but he says this is for the new T.J. Hooker. So apparently, in the fictional fantasy world of True Romance, this T.J. Hooker series has been rebooted. Mm-hmm. They get to the Safari Inn where Clarence and Alabama are staying. Clarence reveals the suitcase full of cocaine and asks Dick to help him sell it, assuming that because Dick is a Hollywood actor, he must know people who would want to buy it.
Clarence, do you have any idea how difficult that's going to be?
I'm offering $500,000 worth of white for $200,000. You're telling me that's going to be difficult?
Very difficult. That's very difficult, you understand? Listen to me. It's difficult because you're selling to a particular group. You understand what I'm talking about? Fat cats, big shots, guys who could afford $200,000, and guys who could use a whole suitcase full of cocaine. Basically, Clarence, guys I don't know, and guys you don't know, and more importantly, they don't know you.
Well, that brings us to the ordeal. Our hero faces the ultimate test, often risking death to overcome his worst fears, sometimes actually appearing to die. It took me a while to find this.
Me too. And
yes.
The only reason I landed here is because I, like you, went to Vogler and I said, okay, what's the reward?
Yep, ding, exactly what I wrote down. I had to find the reward. And I think, Dan, this might be the most unconventional ordeal we've covered.
Yes.
It's the meeting with Elliot at Six Flags. The object of Clarence's quest is arguably the perfect life with his new bride. And if he can just unload this cocaine, he and Alabama can take that money and live a carefree life.
Yep.
And he can quit effing around, as his father told him. Selling the coke is the key. So they're in line for this roller coaster. More about that in the tidbits. And they're discussing the sale of this $500,000 worth of cola.
Cola.
Like, what a terrible code word. Elliot is such a dork. He's totally unfit to do it. You have this $500,000 worth of cola. Like, how is that?
Yeah.
But Bronson Pinchot, again, so brilliant. It's fair to say that, as in all Tarantino movies, True Romance is crammed with meta storytelling. So the movie opens with Clarence telling that prostitute at the bar about how he wants to be Elvis in Jailhouse Rock. His first date with Alabama is at the movies and then at a comic book store where Clarence tells her about a story of love and self-sacrifice in one of the comics. Dick is an actor trying to get on TV. The guy they're trying to sell the coke to is a movie producer who makes movies. So this whole movie is stuffed with self-referential storytelling. And this is why my pitch for this scene being the ordeal comes right out of Vogler. But it's not a section talking about the hero's experience of the ordeal. It's a section about the audience's experience of the ordeal.
Okay.
There's a section called A Taste of Death, and it's on page 188 from the 25th anniversary hardcover edition. I will quote, "People pay good money for a taste of death. Bungee jumping, skydiving, and terrifying amusement park rides gives people the jolt that awakens fuller appreciation of life. Adventure films and stories are always popular because they offer a less risky way to experience death and rebirth through heroes they can identify with." So this is the ride the audience and the characters are going on. It's a momentary break from the literal violence of the rest of this film. The ordeal is the only part of the film that does not contain violence, arguably. But it serves this effect of loosening up Elliot. Like, Elliot is vomiting, sick, disoriented, and he just sort of gives up and calls his boss, and then Christian Slater takes the phone and seals the meeting. But there's one other nugget on page 183. In some way, every story, heroes face death or something like it. Their greatest fears, the failure of an enterprise, the end of a relationship, the death of an old personality. So the enterprise here is the sale of the coke, and he's facing the death of it if he doesn't persuade Elliot to get them that meeting, and they'll have to start over.
I enjoyed how Clarence took the metaphor or the code language that Elliot was trying to use and used it in a much more effective way when he's speaking to Lee Donowitz.
Yeah.
Using Dr. Zhivago as a metaphor for the amount of cocaine that Clarence has available for him.
Yeah, it's a much more useful metaphor and a more believable one. If the cops were tapping the phone,
right,
you might actually have a conversation with a producer about distributing a movie.
Yeah, and Lee Donowitz is a smart guy. He picks up on it immediately.
And also, you get the sense that he immediately likes Clarence for making this analogy. And Clarence butters him up a little bit by saying he's a fan.
All right, well, that brings us to the last segment of Act 2, the reward or the ultimate boon. Having faced their worst fear, the hero seizes the object of their quest. Lee Donowitz, charmed by Clarence, agrees to the meeting. At Wednesday at 3 p.m. at the Beverly Ambassador, Elliot says he'll meet you, and if he likes you, he'll buy your Coke, and if not, he'll tell you to F off, and he'll walk out of the room. That's it. That's the reward right there.
I totally agree. I had two other little things. One is Clarence drops off Alabama at the hotel and goes to get celebratory burgers, right? Celebration, campfire scenes is part of the reward. Another late reward, Dick gets the part on TJ Hooker.
Oh, yeah.
He gets the part.
Yes.
And it's funny because the audition is played as though he's a joke and it didn't go well.
Right.
Conchata's like, you're a fine actor, you're a fine actor.
Yeah.
And I was like, I felt for Dick. But then when I rewatched the scene a second time, he's so charming in that audition. And he's so committed to like driving the car. He's like, okay, I'm driving. Get off it. It's actually a good audition. So I can imagine Conchata Ferrell going, this guy, yeah, I think so.
I thought it was played as though it was a poor audition, which is why it's such a surprise that he gets the role.
Yeah, I think it was played that way. But when I went back and watched it, I'd be like, yeah, that guy's fully committed. He is fully committed to this part. Why not? I don't know. I'm not a casting director. Ask your wife if she buys what I'm saying at all.
I don't know.
Well, ladies and germs, that finishes up Act 2, which means it's time for us to go get a drink.
Listeners, welcome to the Vogel Lounge. Gonna have a drink. Dan, tell me about the themed beverage you found for True Romance.
Mine is very simple, but very applicable.
I love it.
I have Crown Royale Peach Whiskey.
Yeah.
It says on the back of the bottle, to create this extraordinary blend, Crown Royale whiskeys are carefully selected by our master blender and infused with the juicy flavor of fresh Georgia peaches. Once picked, the peaches are destoned, pressed, and strained to preserve their bright aromatic flavor. The harmonious notes of this summer fruit complement the smoothness of Crown Royale blended whiskey. Crown Royale.
Unlike Floyd, the peaches are destoned.
Now, love it. Now, this says mix with iced tea for a refreshing tasting cocktail. I'm not going to waste my time with iced tea.
No.
We've got to find out what this tastes like on its own. So here's what it looks like. Oh, I forgot to do the whole thing where I was going to get a white thing behind it.
We know what it looks like by now.
It just looks like whiskey. We're mixing it with peaches. Oh! Wow. It just tastes like peaches. There is no alcohol burn at all.
What's the ABV?
How deep can I get my nose in here before I smell that sharpness? Okay, I've got to get my nose deep into the glass and breathe in before I even get any kind of little sting.
What's the ABV on it?
Or
the proof, I guess.
Doesn't say.
Does it say?
35. Hold on. 35%. This isn't whiskey. It can't be.
It's a liqueur,
it has to be
right?
40%. It has to be 40% to be whiskey.
Huh.
Or does Canadian whiskey have a different requirement? Crown Royale is Canadian, so I wonder if they've got a different rule, or if I don't know. It is 70 proof. I didn't even look at that before. Let's see what this stuff tastes like. If it tastes as peach as it smells, because it really does. It just smells like a fresh peach, to the point where I suspect synthetic. It smells that peachy. The flavor, it's really nectary.
Like sweet?
Yes. Peach nectar. Yeah, very sweet.
But not cloying?
Very peachy. It borders on that. I think this might actually benefit from being a cocktail mixer and not just being consumed neat. This is not bad. I don't think that I'm going to be drinking this neat. I think this does need to be in a cocktail of some kind.
Iced tea. What if you threw a couple ice cubes in there make it more refreshing?
Maybe. I didn't bring any ice with me. What do you have while I drink this peach nectar?
What I really, really, really wanted but could not find is a beer from St. Elmo Brewing called Slater IPA.
Oh, named after Christian Slater?
So bad. Obviously.
St. Elmo is in Austin, Texas, I believe.
Wanted it so bad, but couldn't find it. Last night I was in Dana Point for a gig, and so I was trying to look for things that I can't get at any Bevmo. And I found a beer from Artifex Brewing Company in San Clemente.
Okay.
Called Trigger Finger IPA.
And the color of the can is sort of peachy.
It's more brown IRL.
Oh,
it's more of like a root
on
beer.
Camera. It's got a sort of a peachy or maybe a brass as like.
I don't know if that makes it. No,
nope. Looks even more peachy now.
Yep.
It's just.
Well, it's more of a root beer brown.
Wow. Okay.
It's described. So this is from the beach town of San Clemente. It's described as citrusy, bitter, and dry, which matches the movie a little bit. It's dry hopped with Mosaic and Cascade hops. It's 6.7 ABV and a very subtle 69 IBU. I'm used to Stone, which they get up there in the 90s, 100s, but this is a very mellow 69 IBU. So here we go. I own like 3 pint glasses. I used to have a collection, but then I don't have room anymore.
Oh.
So I'm using, because this movie came out our senior year, I'm using my Brea Wildcats class of 94. All right, here we go.
Oh, no.
I spilled.
Yeah, you did.
I'm spilling on me.
We're seeing it. We're seeing it.
Oh, gross. Wow. It is dripping like a mofo. All right, there it is. Hold on a second. I'm going to clean myself up a little bit. my whole life is going to smell like citrus. Well, I can smell the citrus on me.
Okay, that's good.
It's very citrusy as I spill it all over. I think it's the first party foul on this segment.
Your dogs are going to love it.
Okay, so it's got a bubbly head. They're big bubbles. That could have been because I was panicking after pouring. It's got a dark. It looks like.
Is
like
it a hazy IPA?
Like your pee after you haven't, like after you're really dehydrated.
You do that a lot, and I'm concerned for you, Jeff. You make that you compare the color of beer to kidney failure and urine a lot.
It does look hazy, but I don't see particulate. I just see bubbles. And
okay.
It doesn't say it's a hazy IPA.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
But you smell the citrusy already.
Pow. Like just pow citrusy. I guess it's like tangerine, maybe grapefruit, but it doesn't smell like orange, and it doesn't smell like lemon, and it doesn't smell like lime.
Are all of those supposed to be in it?
It says tangerine. It just says citrusy. It doesn't say anything about what exactly is in it.
Okay.
It just says citrusy.
All right.
There's very little information on their website or on the can. Like if you click on the beer on their website, it takes you to Beer Advocate or Untapped, one of the two.
Oh,
okay, here we go.
Really? They don't even have their own website?
Well, they do, but if you click on the specific beer on their website, it doesn't take you to their webpage for that beer. It takes you to...
That's weird.
Beer Advocate, yeah. Yeah. Citrusy, dry, bitter. That's exactly right. It's citrusy at first. You expect it to be sweet, but then it's like, oh, that's very like my tongue feels like a dried out sponge, and then the bitter finish. This is an IPA drinker's IPA.
Okay. The hoppiness is enough that what am I trying to say, Jeff? A entry-level IPA explorer maybe would find the IBUs too harsh when you call it an IPA drinker's IPA. That's what I think is the hops are aggressive.
I think that the smell, the citrusy smell, is misleading. Like if you've ever had the grapefruit IPA, the grapefruit Sculpin.
Yeah, I think I have one in my fridge right now.
That's an IPA that delivers the flavor that the nose promises. This is not. This does not give you the citrus you expect.
Okay.
It's hoppy, dry, and bitter. So it's interesting. I don't think I would order a second one. All right, that concludes our beverage segment. And now, on to Act 3.
Well, Dan, Act 3 begins with Road Back, where the hero's pursued by the vengeful forces, he disturbed when he sees the object of his quest. The object of his quest. I can't even do it anymore. Vincenzo Cacote's henchman
Virgil, this is Gandolfini, is hunting our heroes.
Gandolfini is great in this,
he's so
by the
great.
way.
He shows up at Dick's apartment and encounters a profoundly stoned Floyd who helpfully tells them they were here, but then they went there. Where did they go? The Safari Motel Inn. Safari Motel. So they're at the Safari Motor Motel Inn Safari Motel. Now, at the end of the scene, we get a line that I quote all the time. Virgil is very artificially nice to Floyd. He's all fake smiles. And when he leaves, Floyd mutters, "Condescend me, man. I'll effing kill you, man."
You say that all the time, too.
All the time. Just in past, I don't know. When someone says something I don't like. As mentioned, Clarence drops off Alabama at the Safari Motor Motel in Safari Motel to get burgers.
Yep.
And when Alabama gets to the room, Virgil is waiting for her.
Oof.
This scene is unbelievably brutal.
It's difficult to watch. My wife loves this film.
Yeah.
But this scene makes her profoundly uncomfortable. Justifiably so. I mean, nobody should watch this scene and not squirm.
It is the worst kind of violence. In Tarantino's movies, they're this violent, but there's an exploitative, or tongue-in-cheek isn't the right word, but there's like a, hey, this is movie violence and it's going too far. It's gratuitous on purpose.
That is Tarantino's directorial stamp. He didn't direct this film, but...
Right. But Tony Scott takes this violence dead seriously. There is nothing tongue-in-cheek or exploitative. This is just brutal violence.
Yeah. And I guess if we're referencing Tarantino-level tongue-in-cheek, think about Uma Thurman's sword fight with the Crazy 88s in Kill Bill. That's what we're talking about.
Right.
Like limbs hacked off and fire hoses of cartoon blood being spewed.
Right.
That's what we're talking about when we say tongue-in-cheek.
And this scene could have been directed that way, but it was not.
I wonder if Tarantino had directed this film, if this scene would have been what we think of as typical Tarantino, or if he had not yet developed that. Because when you look at the violence in Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, much more grounded.
Yeah.
Those films don't have the cartooniness yet.
But still less severe than this, I would argue. So Virgil wants to know where the coke is. And when she won't answer, he punches her in the face and knocks her down. But she's defiant. She tells him, F you. He hits her in the face again. He's pulling her hair, pushing her against the wall, and her face is covered in blood, and she gives him the finger.
And laughs.
And laughs at him. And he says, you got a lot of heart, kid. And that's when we realize this guy is scary.
Yeah.
He sits down.
Wait a minute. That's when we realize it? The first time he decks her and then he gets this little pleasurable look on his face. That's not when you realize this guy is scary, Jeff?
Yeah, no, that's scary. But to me, when we realize some part of him finds her cute and he's still going to kill her. Like, to me, that's, you got a lot of heart, kid. So then he sits down, lights a cigarette, and proceeds to tell her how hard it is the first time you kill somebody, but then it gets easier and easier and easier. Then he looks under the bed and he finds the coke. And he's like, I can't believe I didn't look there. Again, there's something comedic, like the piece of paper on the fridge that they find at the end of the walk-in hopper scene. Could have avoided all that violence, but he pulls a gun. He's ready to end it. She holds up in defense a corkscrew on a Stegosaurus keychain. And now he's playing with her. He's like, oh, all right, sweetheart, you want to fight back? I'll give you one shot. Stick it in me. And he opens up his shirt like she's going to try and stick it in his chest. And she plunges it into his foot. And now he's screaming, and she bashes him over the head with a statue, and he throws her through the plate glass shower. Oh, it's Elvis?
It's an Elvis bust. Yes.
Oh. And then he throws her through a plate glass shower door, and she rubs soap in his eyes. This is mayhem.
Yeah.
And then, as he's recovering from the soap in his eyes, she picks up the lid of the toilet tank and breaks it over his head, and he's still not dead. She makes a flamethrower out of a lighter and some hairspray, sets him on fire, stabs him in the back again with the corkscrew, then gets his shotgun and shoots him And then beats his corpse with the butt of the shotgun. I mean, she
goes feral.
Not only does she show more guts and defiance than we've seen from this sweet little girl throughout the movie, but she is horrendously violent. And when she beats that dead corpse, I mean, I get it that she's also like she's reacting to the violence that she was just assaulted with. But in that scene, I get it that this isn't just about the time he hit her. This is her beating back the ghosts of some kind of abuse she's suffered her whole life. Clarence arrives the last moment and gets her and puts her in the car. Meanwhile...
Hang on. Can we back up a little bit?
Yeah,
While this is happening, Clarence is at the burger stand waiting for his burgers to be made.
Mm-hmm.
And he sees Gregory Sporlater sitting on one of the tables reading an issue of Newsweek featuring Elvis.
Yes.
Gregory Sporlater.
Yes.
Third appearance on the hero's journey after The Rock and Say Anything. I was so excited when I saw him.
Meanwhile, Elliot's driving a Porsche like a maniac. He's high AF. There's a blonde girl in the passenger seat polishing his gear shift. And the cops pull him over, and he's got this sample bag of coke, and he's trying to get the girl to like hide it. He's like, hide it in your bra. How would you fit like a pound of cocaine in your bra? I don't know, but he's trying to get her to hide it, and she's not having any of it.
That's how irrational and terrified he is.
And he can't even get her name right. He calls her a whore.
Candy and Carla and whatever.
Yeah, and she like hits the bag of coke and it sprays all over his face.
Amazing. And she laughs. Oh, it's such a cathartic moment for her. She's like, you a-hole.
Covered in cocaine. Cut to police station. We've got Tom Sizemore and Chris Penn tag teaming him, beating into submission to find out where he got the coke.
Verbally.
You're going to jail. Yeah, verbally. Sorry.
Verbally.
Okay, and then they're LA cops, but they both have New York names and New York accents, which
so does their
and so does the chief. And I just wonder if it was like Sizemore was doing it and it just got contagious or something. I don't know. But Ami's like, aren't they in LA? Why are they? But also, it's the way Tarantino writes that they had to speak with it. So anyway, finally, to end this sequence, or I see this as the end of the sequence, they get him to flip. He's agreed to wear a wire. And it's going to be a big drug bust. So this is the brilliance of Tarantino setting up what we know is going to be some kind of face-off between the mob, the cops, and our heroes. So the final scene is this deep breath moment. Clarence is tending to Alabama's wounds. They're on like this abandoned couch next to the field, separating the fence, and then there's the airport, right? And they're fantasizing about getting on one of those planes and escaping. The first time I saw this movie, that was the scene that convinced me that they were going to die.
Yep.
And it's a great setup. And there's a little bit of, in the tidbits, we'll talk about Tony Scott's vision of the ending and Tarantino's. But to me, that's the end of The Road Back.
That brings us to the resurrection. The hero faces death one more time in a final battle or showdown. This time, the danger is at the apex, and woo, buddy, is it ever. The deal at the Beverly Ambassador. Clarence and Alabama and Dick Ritchie, the three of them show up at the Beverly Ambassador and meet Elliot Blitzer in the lobby. Elliot is uncomfortable. He is wearing a wire, which the box is like in his crotch. And he's like, aren't they going to see this? And he's like constantly adjusting himself.
That scene where he's testing the mic and he's like, hi, I'm with the Boy Scouts. What does he say?
I'm with the Boy Scouts of America. We're raising funds to go to the Jamboree by selling uncut cocain.
The cops are loving it.
They love him. They love
Tom
this guy.
Sizemore's like, I love this guy. I like this guy. I want him to win.
This trio, led by Elliot, walk into this gorgeous hotel suite at the Beverly Ambassador.
Mm-hmm.
And being projected on the wall are dailies of what we find out later is the sequel to Coming Home in a Body Bag, which was like the hit film that Lee Donowitz made about the Vietnam War, which characters say was second only to Apocalypse Now. So there is this chat between Clarence as Clarence is trying to charm Lee into buying this cocaine. And it's a battle, but it is a verbal one. And there's some humorous moments where Elliot starts kind of adjusting himself because the giant metal box that's being taped to his junk is uncomfortable. So he starts adjusting it, and that starts messing with the audio signal to the cops that are in the adjacent room.
Tarantino takes the whole wearing a wire and flips it on its head.
Finally, though, Elliot seems to adjust himself in just the right way that the signal is reacquired. Just at the moment where they hear Lee say, "Get the money, let's pay this guy, and we'll complete this exchange." And Nicky Dimes and Detective Nicholson, they're like, "That's it!" They throw off their headphones, burst into the room, guns drawn, screaming. The two heavily armed bodyguards of Lee Donowitz, one of whom is played by Eric Allen Kramer, the Boris, the guy with the blonde ponytail. Mm-hmm. Eric Allen Kramer. Disney Channel fans, you may know him as the father in Good Luck Charlie.
Wow. Range, people.
Then, so there's this screaming standoff. Then the mob shows up, bursts in the other door. Now you've got a 3-way standoff between Lee's bodyguards, the police, and the mob, who are all screaming at each other, pointing their guns at each other. It's a Reservoir Dogs style gunfight that erupts now, where everyone's being shot by everybody else. And when I first started making my notes, I wrote down, "Ooh, and nice guy Eddie survives this time." And then 30 seconds later, I had to write, "Oh wait, never mind." Chris Penn played Nice Guy Eddie in Reservoir Dogs. And there is a famous meme, "Who Shot Nice Guy Eddie?" There are t-shirts about it, because if you watch that film, you don't really, it's hard to tell who shot Nice Guy Eddie.
So much shooting
There's
happening.
so much shooting going on. But Chris Penn's character here, Nicky Dimes, he survives the initial onslaught. And here's probably where we'll discuss further in the bonus audio content, but there are 2 different endings that were filmed involving the fate of Nicky Dimes, who shoots him when this happens. But in the version I saw, it was Alabama.
Right.
During the gunfire, Clarence, who has retired to the bathroom,
and apparently doesn't hear
momentarily doesn't hear any of these gunshots. Yeah, while he's in the bathroom, like really good sound deadening going on at the bathrooms at the Beverly Ambassador Hotel. And he's talking to Elvis about what's going on here, trying to get pumped up. Another meeting with the mentor.
Yeah.
Then he hears something going on, and he comes out of the bathroom just in time to get like shot in the head, right? Like bullet in the eye.
Yeah.
Once the gunfire has cleared, Alabama rushes to Clarence's side. He is unresponsive, and she is mourning, and Nicky Dimes finds Boris behind the wet bar, bleeding from multiple gunshot wounds, and he executes Boris. But that gunshot alerts or freaks out Alabama. I don't know, but she grabs the gun and just puts a few into Nicky Dimes, and that
bam.
That takes care of him.
Ugh. Brutal. Everybody's
It is
dying.
a savage gunfight. It is one of those where pretty much everybody dies.
Except Clarence, Alabama, and Dick.
So the final moment of resurrection is literally Clarence, who we think is dead, twitches, comes to, and Alabama sobs with rejoice. That's what I saw was the end of the resurrection.
100% agree. That takes us to Return with the Elixir.
A hero, having won some precious treasure, reward, now returns to the ordinary world to share the spoils of battle.
That's pretty good.
We didn't really mention this, but Alabama narrates the intro and the outro of this movie, but it's not her story. It's Clarence's story, I would argue. But we see them driving to Mexico in Clarence's purple Cadillac. And then we dissolve to them on a beach, Clarence in an eye patch, playing with a child. This reminded me of Zihuatanejo at the end of Shawshank. Very idyllic. Although unlike that, my impression with this wasn't a dream or fantasy. This was definitely real. And of course, they've named their son Elvis.
Right.
And we hear Hans Zimmer's, by the way, Hans Zimmer, what a chameleon. what an incredible range. We hear his romantic mallet score as the sun sets in the west.
Amid the chaos of that day, when all I could hear was the thunder of gunshots, and all I could smell was the violence in the air, I look back and am amazed that my thoughts were so clear and true, that 3 words went through my mind endlessly, repeating themselves like a broken record. You're so cool. You're so cool. You're so cool.
And scene.
Okie dokie doggy daddy, that wraps up True Romance. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoyed this episode and are interested in and able to support the podcast, visit patreon.com/Heroes Journey Podcast and see if one of the tiers appeals to you.
If you're already a patron, thank you so much. You can now hear the bonus audio segment where we discuss trivia about the movie. And if you're a patron at Hero tier or above, you can also watch the bonus Campfire video segment where we meta-analyze the episode you just listened to and probably have another glass of whatever we drank during the Vogler Lounge segment.
Boy, howdy. Another huge way to help the podcast is spread the word of mouth. Ask your friends to check us out. Rate and review the show. Apple Podcasts seems to be the best way to do that. Remember when we used to say review us on iTunes?
Oh my God.
Way back,
no. Oh, wow.
Way back when.
Yes.
iTunes, no mas, RIP.
The biggest thing to do is share us with a friend. Send them a link to your favorite episode, preferably Braveheart. We want to call out our demigod patrons, and I'm not sure if I should call them out as Christian Slater or as Christopher Walken.
Do the first name as Christian Slater and the last name as Christopher Walken.
Scott Sanford, Ricky Garvin, John Peterson Jr., Jeff Scott.
Oh my God, he's doing it, everybody. He's doing
Joseph Wilbur, Michelle Calderon.
Why is that the funniest? But it is.
It's just the build-up.
Ami Garvin, Salathiel Jones.
Okay, the name Salathiel sounds really good as a Christian Slater voice.
Jasmine and Pete Hudson. And Dan's mom and dad. Huh?
Oh my God.
This is the 12-minute outro.
Special thanks to Jeff Garvin for doing that, and special thanks to Taylor Jordan for composing the Hero's Journey theme and bumper music, the theme which you are hearing right now, and to Jason Dorff for our episode artwork. Links to their portfolios can be found on the About page of the Hero's Journey podcast.com. I had to try.
You do it. True Romance is copyright 1993 Morgan Creek Productions, Inc.
Thanks again for listening. You're so cool. You're so cool. Until next time.
Journey on.
Condescend me, man. I'll fucking kill you, man.